All right. So, for those who know, or for those who don't know, about to share where the word Christian come from. All right. So the word Christian come from what they were actually called were Cretan. Now, this word is not a good thing. All right. So let's look at it. It's 1779 from French Cretan, 8th century, from Alpine dialect Cretan, a dwarf and a deformed idiot, okay, of type formerly found in families in the Alpine lands, a condition caused by congenital deficiency of thyroid hormones. The word is of uncertain origin. By many, it has identified with vulgar Latin Christianus, a Christian, a generic term for anyone, but often with a sense of poor fellow related. Criticism, 1796. All right. Now, let's go and look in the Bible and let's see the first time the prophets were called Christian. All right, man. Now this is the KJV. This is Acts 11, 26 through 28. All right. Now that we know where the origin in the word Christian come from, now let's put it into perspective. It says, and we have found him. He brought him unto Antioch. And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church and taught much people. And the disciples were called first Christian at Antioch. Okay. So pretty much they were calling the prophets idiots, dwarfs, basically calling them derogatory terms. So when you see the word Christian, people think, oh, it's a follower of Christ. First of all, the Son of God was never even called Christ. He was called Mashiach. He was called Yeshua HaMashiach. They were called the sect of the Nazarenes. All right? So, this is the purpose of studying, right? Because we so quick to call ourselves by titles, but don't know the origin of the word. We just believe what people tell us, or we just open a book that has been altered with some words, and we just, oh, be a Christian. It's good to be a Christian. No. All right. Let me show you something else that the prophets were called. Now, we have to understand the history of the Israelites. All right. The Israelites were not liked. All right. The Romans were the enemy of the Israelites. The Greeks were the enemy of the Israelites. Okay, so we have to understand this. All right. All right. Now let's look at Acts 13. Now what else were the prophets called at Antioch? Now let's read. Now there were of the called out assembly that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas, and Shimon. right? These were Hebrews, Israelites that were called what? Niger and Lucius of Cyrene and Manian, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. Shaul. Okay, so I believe that would to be Paul. Now, gotta take into account that the prophets were not liked. All right, because they were teaching and preaching in the name of Yeshua. So they were called names. Why do you think they were expelled? Right? They was exiled. Yes, Yahuwah, the creator, the king of Israel, punished them and sent them into exile for disobedience. But this is no difference than today. The name calling, the disrespect. All right? Didn't the Bible, didn't one of the curses of the children of Israel say that they would be called a byword and a proverb? Like they would be called names into all nations that they go. Matter of fact, let's get that. All right, check it out, man. We got Devarim, Deuteronomy 28 and 37, and look at one of the curses that was upon the children of Israel. And this was during the time of Moses, right? So we know that these curses are upon our people. Now think about Acts, right? 13:1, when they were called Niger. Or, you know what that word is. It's a byword. All right, when they were calling them Cretan, they was called first Cretan at Christian, whatever, at Antioch. They was calling them dwarfs, idiots, stupid people, right? Because they was worshiping an invisible God. They was worshiping one God, monotheistic. And the Greeks and the Romans were a polytheistic people, meaning they worship more than one God, all right? So they didn't understand the culture, just how people don't understand the culture today. They didn't understand it, and a lot of people disrespect and call names, and make fun of and make a mockery of things they don't understand. There's nothing new under the sun. Look at this. He says, and you shall become a astonishment. What is an astonishment? Like, wow, what is wrong with those people? Why is this stuff happening to them people? I can't believe these people. I can't believe it, right? A proverb. A proverb is something that's mostly said about a person, a people. Man, black people can't never come up. Man, black people this, black people that, right? Look, check it out. A byword, what's a byword? A byword is names, right? What were we called? We were called from the time that we got here to the time that we still currently reside here in America and all over to the nations, to the four corners. We would call everything except a child of the Most High. Right? We say our byword, the N-word, called monkey, called whatever, African American, Negro, black. All right? He says, among all the nations, see, whither Yahuwah shall lead you. So wherever we go, we will be a mockery and be called names. So it's no difference than Antioch. In Antioch, they would call nigger. You know what I mean? Niger. It's like saying, oh, those black people, right? Nothing different. In Antioch, they were called Neger. All right? And in Antioch, they were also called Cretan, which we just seen. It's called, in the etymology, you can look this up on your own. Type in Cretan, etymology of Cretan. Right? That was the word, and somehow it became Christian. Right? So there you have it, man. The etymology of the word Cretan, Christian. All right. So we need to beware and be mindful of what we call ourselves. All right. People always want to be labeled something. All right. We are the children of Israel. Nothing less, nothing more. Shalom.
Or the priesthood there of the Catholics, they appealed to the emperor at the time, and he started to investigate them. And everything changed with that dynamic. That goes back to the days of Elder Cyprian and Elder Donatus and people like that. And a lot of them there was a time even when you could not even have the Israelite scriptures in Rome. They had to burn. There were so many books burnt back then, But the idea was to use violence to usurp the authority of the Israelites and gain that power that they exercised over time. And once you have the power, then you can do anything you want.
Now, Christianity gave birth in the time of Paul. Not saying that Paul started Christianity, but in that time, it kind of started to grow. And as the Israelites migrated, did that migration give Christianity that room to grow and build and become a powerhouse?
Well, I have to disagree with that statement, because there was no Christianity until about the 16th century. What happened at the time of Paul was that we sent him out as a minister to teach, to introduce to the Gentiles and the opportunity to learn about our God who created the heavens and the earth. It is one thing to know that you exist, regardless of who you are, but it is another thing to know why, and to know who created all of what you are taking for granted and enjoying and benefiting from. So Paul went to teach them, to share with them the wisdom of our Israelite forefathers, and he did a very good job. However, he was constantly battling idolatry all over Europe, and it didn't begin there. It started out in Babylon, and then it went from Babylon to Egypt, and it was magnified in Egypt.
Worshipping one God, many gods.
Idolatry is worshiping false gods.
False gods, okay.
Yeah, but we only would know who was false and who was real. And if we don't get a chance to teach you, then you're not going to know, but you will benefit. I think today they call it voodoo or obia. That's where the cross comes into play. And some of the Europeans, they wear the cross on their forehead when they worship. It's black, cube. And then others, they unfold it. And it becomes, so one is a cube, one is folded. And when it's unfolded, then it becomes the cross.
I see. Now, I have to ask, in the scriptures, it does mention Christian. Mm-hmm. Is Christian different from Christianity?
Yes.
How so?
Christian is, well, first of all, Christian was spelled Criten, because I think it's French or Swiss, one of those origins. And it means retard, idiot, stupid, anything like that. Mm-hmm. Because our Israelite forefathers were called Christians at Antioch about the year 50. Notice, they were called Christians by the Gentiles. But the question begs itself, who were they before they were called Christians? And even after they were called Christians. So it's like my throwing the N-word at somebody. It doesn't identify them. It's just an insult, you see? So I always find it rather interesting, because if they called us Christians in the year 50, then they adopted that name. Now they're using the N-word, right? Are they going to use that word as a philosophy, one of their religious experience? Eventually? And how much time is it going to take before they call themselves the N-word? So yes, that word meant retard, and it.
Hey, yo, that's crazy because don't other nations use that word now? You hear Europeans, Chinese, Mexicans call themselves the N-word. That's deep.
It reflected a medical condition. It was a thyroid disorder. And the thyroid gland, for those of you that know, if it's overly stimulated, then you can grow up to 7 feet tall or higher. If it's understimulated, then you become a dwarf. And, you know, when you got a dwarf, you have a big head, you got hands that are probably too long for your body. So everything is messed up. And not only that, in appearance, you not only look unattractive, from some people anyway, you also have a mental disorder. So then I did this research years ago, and I thought the word Christian, the way it is spelled, it's not that bad. But when you understand it's not that spelling, that's the English version of it.
Right.
But the original version of it wasn't like that. It's French or Latin or something, C-R-E-T-I-N. And I invite, you know, your audience to take a look and investigate this for themselves and see exactly what I'm saying. Now, what would make them use that term? That's the question. Yeah. So let's say I remembered when the Romans went into the temple in Jerusalem. It was Titus, I believe. And he was looking for the God, because how are these people? There's just a handful of people, but they're so good at fighting, you know. And if they fight in the Roman Empire, come on, guys. And you're making us having second thoughts about the battle sometimes. Who is your God? And they went to look, because they had Mars and Jupiter and Apollo and Zeus and everybody.
Yeah.
And when they looked, they went to the temple. There's nothing. No image. At best, it was just a 7-branch candlestick.
No, it's crazy because that's true. Our scripture says in the book of Yahuchanan, which is the colonized name John, it says no man had ever seen God at any time. So yeah, the Romans thought we were stupid because we had a God that they couldn't see.
Where's the God? But they took that anyway.
Right.
Right? And they have an arch in Rome today that reflect that. The key here is, how is it then that these people, Israelites, could worship a God that they cannot see? And we, as Gentile Europeans, we have dozens of gods. And we got us images for every one of them.
That's right.
They must be retards. They must be Christians. And the key here is, how is it then that these people, Israelites, could worship a God that they cannot see? And we, as Gentile Europeans, we have dozens of gods. And we got us images for every one of them.
That's right.
They must be retards. They must be Christians. And the only people that they could identify that was the people in the Alpine region that looked strange and acted strange.
Israelites back then were called Christian as an insult, and Christian is not somebody's identity.
That's correct.
It's just an insult.
That's correct. Because it brings me to a very, very important point, naming. And this is something that I take extremely serious because I understand the implication. For me to name you, I have to have authority over you, right? Whether I'm your father or whatever. I cannot just assign a name without, a name is more than a label, right? Without disrupting your life and so on and so forth. So people have to understand that names are very sacred. They are more than identification. They address the spiritual responsibility of that individual as well. And there's so much that we can talk about that. So when people say Jew or Moor or what have you, or even the N-word, those are just descriptions. Those are not names. Those are not names. When they say the so-called black man or the so-called white man, again, there are no black men. There are no white men, right? So get the identification of that individual. Look at their ancestry. Know what is their nationality. And that's how you address it, because therein, you're going to see the culture of the individual. You're going to see the purpose of that individual. Then you can appreciate it, because maybe that individual could do something using his or her God-given talent to help you. But if you just write them off by throwing some kind of negative word at them, and then it gets stuck over time, then you've done yourself a disservice, number one. And number two, you put yourself in a state of ignorance.
What do you mean there's no black person or white person?
Yes. As I said earlier, the Christians of Iberia identified their own as white people. And then they discredited the Israelites as black people. So with that generalization and having authority over us then and even today, they were able to enforce that. And even you can pick up a textbook today and you will see black people, white people. Mm-hmm. How are you going to determine the nature or the identity of an individual by just looking at them?
I see.
It's impossible. Yes, I could say with a great deal of confidence, because I'm an Israelite, that my father created man from the soil. And for people that may think that I'm joking, go to your local store and ask for a bag of humus. Go to Home Depot or wherever and get a bag of humus. You will be given the blackest soil that you have ever seen. It is also some of the richest soil that you would ever utilize. So there seems to be then, if you look at the word human, there is that you in there, right? It's a very, very, very wise and clever definition. But the thing here is, yes, the first man and woman, they look like me. Not a problem. But that happened with Shem. These are the children of Noah, Ham, and Japheth, all the children of Noah. So that's what Noah looked like as well. But that is not the issue. The issue is there's more to it than that. And if you just write people off because they have a different appearance, then you're limiting yourself, number one, because you're demonstrating your level of ignorance that it is extremely high. Look around at the vegetation. Look at the plants. How do they look? Most of the time, they're green, right? And you don't want to eat cabbage or lettuce that is of a different appearance, because you will be robbed of the nutritional value of that plant. You see? So then, when you should be eating the vegetables to gain that medicinal, if you will, quality, you're just putting stuff in your system that could hurt your body. Look at the fish in the ocean. Look at the birds. They're all different in appearance. And every day even is different. Today was a beautiful sunshine day. Yesterday was dark and gloomy. Do I just go around and get upset with the days because they don't look the way I want them to look? All I'm suggesting here is that there is so much to learn just by going beyond the surface and getting to appreciate people for whom they really are. But you got to do a little bit of thinking. You got to see qualities in individuals. You got to see something in your own self. Because if you just casting stones at people, that means you don't like yourself. That is called an inferiority complex. And out of that comes hatred, comes violence, comes ignorance and lies. That's not the way you want to go.
So not all black people are the same?
That is correct.
Okay, so in Africa, you got a mixture of a lot of different black races.
Well, I don't even use the term race.
Okay.
Because when you say race, I see someone with athletic ability.
Okay.
Running across the desert or something like that, or swimming in a pool, right? Again, these are Christian inventions, right? Which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So let us look and see, let us say nationality.
Okay.
Or culture, right? Because we're not running anywhere. And if you look at what they're doing, they're going backwards. They're not going forward. So there is no race. You see, life itself is a journey. And it's a race that is not for the swift, if you will, but for those that can endure, according to the terms of the length of time. And this is what we're looking at here, more so than whether somebody is of a different complexion. And that's not race. That's a genetic matter, right? But I say, and I know I may be a little strange, in order to understand, draw the blood of the individual, right? Now, I challenge anyone to do that. You can't just go around taking people's blood. But the point is, therein you will see, if you will, that every human being that has ever walked this earth has the blood of a man and a woman that was created from black earth. Every human being, regardless of whatever they look like today.
So because you look like somebody else does not mean that you're of the same family.
That is
for
true.
For example, Ishmael. You mentioned Ishmael. They were a dark race.
That is true.
But yet they weren't friends with the Israelites.
Okay, you use the term race again.
There you go, bad habit.